It's the court case of the decade, if not century. The church is on trial for murder of a young woman. A young woman they tried to save through 67 exorcisms. The evidence they brought forward is convincing to a degree. It's when the tapes start playing and the urge to vomit is almost overwhelming that you start to think, if it's true, how else could such sounds and vulgar words be coming from a devout Catholic young woman? You begin to wonder, is this a trial to punish those who let her die? Or is the devil himself on trial? And the court is trying to decide between believing scripture or denying the possibility of possession, let alone the existence of Satan himself.
Welcome to Tales from the Graves, where shadows lurk and whispers echo.
Join us as we delve into the unknown, exploring tales of mystery, horror, and the supernatural.
Be prepared to journey into the darkness, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Jess.
Together, we're the Grave Sisters, and we'll be your guides as we unearth the strange and unusual.
So find your flashlight, grab your shovel, and let's dig in.
The following podcast is rated for mature audiences.
It may contain graphic scenes of violence and explicit language that some may find disturbing.
Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to episode 17, Gravediggers. I'm doing something a little different this week, you see. I watched this amazing movie on Shudder called Exuma, a South Korean horror film that was just a chef's kiss to watch. And that got me feeling a different way. Now, there is murder technically involved in this case, but this episode isn't considered true crime. Like, I don't consider it a true crime. I consider it more supernatural, spoopy.
I've never heard of Exuma.
Okay, so Exuma is a Shudder exclusive.
Which I do like Shudder. Shudder's got some good stuff on there.
Yeah, we finally reached the point in the year where I have to, get my Shudder back because they got all the horror flicks. Love them. Not sponsored by them, but, I do love them. They're very cheap subscription.
They could totally sponsor us. Just saying.
Yeah. But Exuma is about, a shaman who she goes and she helps families deal with these curses and stuff. And then there's geomancy, which I didn't do a whole lot of research into geomancy because I did not expect to be talking about the movie. But they pick out spots that are good and where you want to build a building or where you want to be buried.
Oh, okay.
Right? So she teams up with really, this got hot, okay? But they're like partners, and they go and do this stuff, and she discovers that, I'm probably gonna need a little extra assistance, and so she contacts a couple geomancers, and one of them's an older man who, basically makes his living finding final resting places for people. And it starts off where they're like, they're rich, they gonna pay us money, but let's also do a good job, because this is something that they do. It is taken very seriously, but it's also how they make their living.
Yeah.
And they go out to this mountain, and the entire time, this geomancer dude is like, nah, I don't want to take this. I do not want to take this. And he's convinced because the, head mourner is what they call them in South Korea. The head mourner, like his son, who was just recently born in the US, is like in pain and suffering, but there's nothing physically or mentally wrong with him that they can tell. And so it follows this story from trying to exhume the remains of an ancestor whom they believe is calling from the grave. Oh. And then it just spirals from there because the ground is basically sour. It's not a good place you want to be buried or anything like that. And it goes into kind of like the history of South Korea during the occupation of Japan a little bit and things of that nature. And it's a long movie, but it is a good movie. It is in Korean. So if you don't really like international films and you don't really want to listen to Korean, I guess don't watch it. But if you don't mind reading subtitles and you are excellent with just a good spooky movie, watch it.
So what's that got to do with your topic for the day? I don't even remember what you said your topic was for today.
It's just like the feel of it. The feel of this film just got me being like, ooh, I want to do something supernatural. I want to do something like exuma, exorcism. And so I was like, ooh, what other spoopy kind of movies are there that may have been based off a true story? I'm like, holy crap on a cracker. Let me just go ahead and tell you the true story behind the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
I knew it. I so freaking knew it. Mm-hmm. As soon as you were telling me some of it, I was like, wait, is that the Emily Rose movie? You're like, how about you just shut your mouth and let us record and then you'll find out.
Yeah, like okay. I had to tell her to basically shut her trap. And I was like, I ain't telling you shit. So I remember watching this movie a few times and it's truly chilling. Like the way they did the film is very, I don't know, the feel of it is.
And the actress, I forgot her name. I remember her from like White Chicks and she was on Dexter and stuff like that. But I don't remember what her.
Excellent.
In that movie, she sold it.
Yeah. If you weren't aware, dear Gravediggers, Jess and I actually grew up in a Catholic home. Yeah. We both attended a local private Catholic school until 6th grade. And even attended Mass on Sundays with our dad. And even after we moved to public school, we continued doing like religion classes on Wednesday evenings. Mm-hmm. So movies like The Exorcist or The Exorcism of Emily Rose were more akin to like a warning for us of something that could happen as opposed to just a scary movie. Man, I don't even remember if Mom was like, we're not watching this. It's going to bring the devil into the house. Because she said that a lot about a lot of movies, not going to lie.
Yeah, but I remember the movie came out when I was working at the movie theater. And so, I mean, I was 18 years old at the time, so I could pretty much do what I wanted.
Yeah, until you watched it. No
so, sure as shit, I watched it, and I loved it. I thought it was good.
So, you know, possession was kind of a real life thing for us because we were taught that that is something that happens. It's true if the church says it's true. Now, as adults, I think we can both look back at that belief system and see the flaws in it. I'm of the firm belief that you should be able to question things and be given a proper answer. And when that answer is, I don't know, or you have to have faith, then I think that topic should be taken with at least a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with being religious. There's nothing wrong with having faith and believing the things that you want to believe.
But there's also nothing wrong with being logical and scientific about certain things. So, yeah.
So on to our actual case.
Ooh, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for this.
All right. Anneliese Michel was born on September 21st of 1952 in Bavaria, West Germany. to a very Roman Catholic set of parents, Josef and Anna. Anneliese attended Mass twice a week, and everything seemed to be going as it should until the year she turned 16. You see, that's when she experienced what they consider like her first seizure. What happened was like she was in school and all of a sudden she just kind of blacked out. And her friend was like, "Oh my God, Anneliese, are you okay?" And that kind of scared her, but it was more like, I don't know what's going on. So that's when she was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. She was given medication and, basically sent her away because they're like, oh, sometimes this happens. You're a teenager, you're growing, blah, 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 whatever. I think the second time she experienced it was when she was in college, from what I remember after doing all my research this morning. It was the way it's explained, where she woke up and felt like something was pressing down on her. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. That sounds more like sleep paralysis to me. But apparently she did experience a seizure at that time too. But that's the one that really, really scared her.
Yeah.
And then in June of 1970, she experienced a third seizure that she was prescribed an anticonvulsant drug, Dilantin, which didn't seem to have much effect. So after this third seizure, she was prescribed...
Is it a Dilaudid, you mean?
No, Dilaudid is...
Is that something different?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Dilaudid is pharmaceutical-grade heroin.
Oh, never mind. Why would you give a person that has seizures Dilaudid?
Yeah,
okay,
no, it's called Dilantin. It was around this time that she described seeing devil faces. And that same month, she was put on a few different psychosis medications because she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. It was by 1973 that Anneliese began experiencing depression. Supposedly hallucinated while praying and complained about hearing voices telling her that she was damned and would rot in hell.
Fun.
Uh-huh. So if you're hearing voices and you're seeing things, that kind of goes along with the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Like, it does.
But you've also got to think with the cocktail of multiple antipsychotics and stuff like that.
There's no telling. Like, I couldn't find an exact list of what she had been prescribed, but think about it. This was also in the 70s.
Yeah. There's like, just shove drugs down her throat and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Ugh.
During this time, she was at a psychiatric hospital, and that didn't seem to make her symptoms any better. She seemed to be growing more and more frustrated with her medical treatment. I mean, they have been treating her for 5 years at this point, and nothing seems to have gotten any better. So I can't really blame her for being frustrated. You're just shoving pills down my throat. Nothing's getting better. What's going on? Kind of deal. During this time, Anneliese was still active in the church. Like, she was still a very firm believer because, like, I didn't say it earlier, but the whole very devout Catholic family, like, her mom was, kind of think about Carrie's mom from Carrie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, kind of along those lines. Like, it was a very loving atmosphere, so it wasn't like abusive to that extent. But from the multiple different videos that I watched on Anneliese, apparently her mother was kind of a believer of the sinner cannot repent for their own sin, and so other people have to help them repent. And so there was supposedly a case where she would make her daughters sleep on the cold, hard floor in winter with no cushion and no blankets.
Why?
To repent for their sins.
But
supposedly. Like, this is just kind of an example of things that she would do to make her children repent for their sins.
Might as well start whipping yourself, like flogging yourself on the back and like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay. Well, like I said, during this time, she was still very active in the church. And she even went to San Damiano with a family friend. This family friend is the first person to suspect that Anneliese was possessed, because Anneliese was unable to walk past a crucifix and refused to drink the water of a Christian holy spring, quote unquote. According to Father Ernst Alt, who we will be hearing more about, he stated this: Anneliese told me, and Frau Hein confirmed this. Frau Hein is who she went on this little trip with. That she was unable to enter the shrine. She approached it with great hesitation and said that the soil burned like fire and she simply could not stand it. She then walked around the shrine in a wide arc and tried to approach it from the back. She looked at the people who were kneeling in the area surrounding the little garden, and it seemed to her that while praying, they were gnashing their teeth. So like grinding their teeth. She got as far as the edge of the little garden. Then she had to turn back. Coming from the front again, she had to avert her glance from the picture of Christ in the chapel in the house. She made it several times to the garden, but could not get past it. She also noted that she could no longer look at medals or pictures of saints. They sparkled so immensely that she could not stand it. Yeah, this is supposedly something that like Anneliese and the family friend Frau Hein told Father Alt. Anneliese's mother claimed that she saw the stigmata on her daughter. For those of you wanting to know what that is,
it's a good movie.
Okay, well, yeah, it's a good movie, but it's a spontaneous appearance of the wounds that Jesus Christ suffered while on the cross. It's uncommon for someone to have all of them, but would consist of the piercing spots on the head, said to be from the crown of thorns, holes through the wrists and feet where the nails had been hammered through to keep him on the cross, and a final deadly one, the piercing in the side. Okay? Anneliese herself believed that she could communicate with Mary, the mother of Jesus. Again, still sounding a lot like schizophrenia to me. But, well, it didn't take long for this notion that Anneliese was possessed to take root, both within her family and within their community in town. Now, when I was doing this research, West Germany was very superstitious, very old school, and about 70% or maybe a little more of the population in Boravia was Catholic. And they were like old school Catholic. Like masses were still in Latin kind of Catholic. Of that, 63% of people in all of Germany supposedly believed in the existence of Satan as a physical being. Like, not a concept, but like flesh and bones, he could come up and walk amongst you kind of deal. Okay?
All right.
When they first tried to get an exorcism approved through the church, they were denied and recommended to continue the medical treatment. The priest advised that to get an exorcism, the bishop would have to approve. To get approved for an exorcism, you have to meet very strict criteria, one of which is the intense dislike for religious objects and supernatural powers, such as knowing things you have no way to know or superhuman strength. Anneliese did meet these criteria so far. Anneliese only worsened after being denied the exorcism. She began displaying aggression, injured herself. A lot of it was biting, like she would bite her arms, she would claw and scratch at them, she would really go to town just hurting herself, as well as other people. She drank her own urine.
Oh, yeah.
And ate insects. She would pee on the floor and then get down on that level and lap it like a dog.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
November of 1973, Anneliese was put on even more medications, including antipsychotic drugs. She took them until sometime before her death, and her symptoms only got worse. She began growling, seeing demons, and throwing things. Do you know what movie was released in December of 1973 that probably had a huge impact on why?
Please say The Exorcist.
Yeah. Let me finish my sentence, you dumb hoe. But yeah, that's why the church pushed back so hard on giving Anneliese an exorcism, because The Exorcist came out in December of 1973. And it was after this movie came out that the Catholic Church was basically flooded with people wanting to seek an exorcism.
That's probably a good thing.
No.
Wanting to get rid of them.
No, So it was during this time that the Catholic Church had to be very strict on who they gave the rites of exorcism to, because a lot of people searching out there for an exorcism were just mentally unwell and needed to seek medical attention. These were parents being like, my son's not himself, and the son's just going through a rebellious teen phase. They're depressed. They're,
my husband's a drinker. He's got the devil in him.
Yes. A lot of it was all of this type of stuff. And so the Catholic Church was like, holy buckets, Batman. Why are there so many people believing that they have demons inside of them? So it was not a good thing. It may have drove people to go back to church, but not necessarily for the right reasons.
Mm.
Finally, in September of 1975, so 1973 to 1975, started seeing all this stuff in 1970. So 5 years, man.
Ugh, that is way too long to be suffering.
Bishop Joseph Stungel, I think that's a Stungel, finally gave permission for an exorcism to be performed on Anneliese, but advised that it should be done in total secrecy. It was after this exorcism that Anneliese began increasingly speaking about dying to atone for the wayward youth of the day and the apostate priests of the modern church. Something I found out while researching this case, supposedly saints and very devout people would agree to be possessed to atone for the sins around them and suffer like Jesus did on the cross. This may have been what a very sick and confused Anneliese Michel thought she was doing. Anneliese went through 1 to 2 exorcisms a week for 10 months. During this time, her parents stopped seeking medical attention for their daughter and solely relied on the exorcisms to save her. In the teaser, I mentioned tapes. They recorded during the exorcisms. In one, you can hear her being asked who was possessing her, and she states that it's Judas and Nero and Cain and Hitler. So, like, she's just throwing out a whole bunch of, like, bad people's names. But supposedly she was possessed by, like, up to 6. So, I have an audio.
Oh, yes.
And we're going to include part of it in today's episode. Because it is free use. It's out there. It's really old. Bear with the audio quality, okay? So here we go. And this is going to be Anneliese normally talking first, like how she spoke.
Ja, ich fühle auch für die anderen Leute, damit die nicht mehr kommen und so. Aber dass das dann so schlimm ist und so grausam und so furchtbar, nee. Das denkt man leiden, das ist so leicht gesagt, aber wenn es dann wirklich schlimm wird, da will man überhaupt nicht mehr, da will mein Kind schlimm.
So that's Anneliese talking normally. And I'm going to pause that. And during her exorcisms, it's going to be vastly different. Here is a headphone warning, as these are converted audios from 1975, and they do spike pretty bad. Also, the screaming.
Oh.
So I guess trigger warning too. That's the priest. I got more. Okay, so that's enough of that. I do have more of it, but so in those clips, you can hear the priests during the exorcism and Anneliese in that voice, in her weird, gravelly kind of voice. And some people are like, that just sounds like a girl doing funny voices. And I mean, like, I do funny voices, but just listening to that audio, can you imagine being in a courtroom listening to that?
Oh, I'd be scared shitless.
Yeah. I'm looking over at our editor right now, and he is doing his absolute best not to just laugh out loud at this audio. So after months of ongoing exorcisms, eventually Anneliese began refusing food and water. According to the priests attending the exorcism and her parents, Anneliese also refused medical treatment. She passed away on July 1st of 1976. According to the autopsy report, Anneliese died due to malnutrition and dehydration as a result of almost a year in a state of near starvation.
Oh.
At the time of her death, she weighed around 66 to 68 pounds.
What?
Or around 30 to 33 kilograms. Yeah, she was...
That skinny?
She was 23 years old. A full-grown adult, and that's how much she weighed.
That poor thing. Oh my gosh.
She also apparently suffered broken knees from the continuous genuflections. For those of you who aren't Catholic or maybe religious, that's kneeling. So genuflections, you know?
You genuflect.
Yep. That's kneeling, and she was unable to move without assistance due to it. After an investigation, the state prosecutor determined that Anneliese's death could have been prevented as late as a week before her death if she had received medical attention.
But she refused it.
Both Anneliese's parents, Josef and Anna, as well as the priests involved in the exorcisms, Father Alt and Father Renz were charged with negligent homicide. While the priests received church-funded lawyers, the Michels were defended by famed Nuremberg trials defense attorney Erich Schmidt-Lechner. For those of you who are like, who the heck is that? What's a Nuremberg? He defended, like, Nazis. Yeah. The state recommended that none of the parties involved be jailed. Instead, they recommended a fine for the priests and that the parents should be exempt of punishment as they had suffered enough, which is a mitigating legal factor in German penal law, apparently. So, like, I guess if you suffered because of something that you did, sucks to suck. During the trial, many doctors were called forth and testified that Anneliese was not possessed, but that the belief stemmed from a psychological effect of her strict religious upbringing, as well as her epilepsy. One Dr. A. Richard Roth, whom Father Alt had apparently consulted for medical help during the exorcism, and from my understanding, went and saw her out of curiosity and not as a true medical professional, told Anneliese during an exorcism that, quote, "There is no injection against the devil, Anneliese," end quote. The defense argued that the exorcism was legal and that the German Constitution protected citizens in the unrestricted exercise of their religious beliefs. They played tapes, much like what I just played for you guys, and just listened to it as evidence of possession. In April of 1978, Anneliese's parents and the priests were convicted of negligent homicide, but given suspended prison sentences in order to share the costs of the legal proceedings. So, like, they had to pay court costs. After the trial, her parents had her body exhumed, claiming that she was buried in such a hurry that they wanted to provide a better coffin for her. But others claim that it was to see the remains, because apparently someone told them that her body would not show signs of decay, and that would be their proof of her possession. If you haven't listened to an earlier episode on vampires, it said that a saint's body will not decay, much like a vampire's. And this is what they were trying to find out. The official reports from the exhumation state that there were the usual signs of decomposition, but it's also claimed that the family was refused entry and they were not allowed to see the body to confirm for themselves. But I also watched a video where someone stated she hadn't decomposed.
So yeah, there's definitely like some kind of mix up with communication there, for sure.
Some believe that she did die for the sins of sinful priests and wayward youths and should be made a saint herself. Apparently, several years later, the German bishops retracted the claim that Anneliese had been possessed. Apparently, several years later, the German bishops retracted the claim that Anneliese had been possessed completely. So they're like, yeah, no, she wasn't possessed. Sorry, my bad. Josef, Anneliese's father, passed away in 1999, and in a 2006 interview, Anneliese Michel, Anneliese's mother, is quoted, "I know we did the right thing because I saw the sign of Christ in her hands." That's the curious case of Anneliesse Michel. It's up to you to decide if she was truly possessed or if she was a very mentally sick young woman who needed better medical treatment, What do you think, Jess?
I just have a question about what was with the youth and everything. If she was taking on the sins of all those people and everything like that, wouldn't something have changed? Or no? Or I'm really not sure how that works.
So, from my understanding, in like the late 60s, early 70s, like you had East and West Germany because the Berlin Wall was still there at that time.
Yeah.
In West Germany, that was the more strict one, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
Either way, one half of the country was definitely more liberal. Definitely more liberal. And the other one was very reserved and strict because it was, you know, more communist, I guess.
Yeah.
But the wayward youths could possibly refer to the fact that during that time, there wasn't a very large, I guess, religious movement or whatever for younger people. And considering she grew up in a very strict religious household, she could just have screwed up kind of ideals over it.
Yeah. I don't know. But I mean, I also kind of feel that even though her mother was the kind of religious person and wanting their kids to do some kind of penance, maybe she felt the need to do the penance on her own so that her other siblings wouldn't have to do it as well. Since, because she was one of the older siblings, right?
Yeah. So technically, Anneliese is the second born, but her older sister died of kidney failure when she was 8.
Oh.
So Anneliese was the eldest alive of 5. So she had 3 younger sisters. So I guess that would make a lot of sense if she's trying to repent for anything that her sisters had done or could do in the future to try and save them from the troubles that she went through.
Yeah. I mean, it just breaks my heart. And then even with the medical community, like it shows how different medical practices were back then than what they are now, for real. Because, I mean, if she did have some kind of psychotic episodes or schizophrenia or anything like that, there would be more tests and everything done than just taking word for it and going, here's some drugs.
Yeah.
And plus, with it being in a completely different country, I mean, I know they had amazing doctors and amazing scientists and stuff, but at the same time, you know, they didn't really know as much as they do now.
No.
Because I know that, like, asylums and sanatoriums and places like that were just dumping grounds for people, basically.
They were. And Anneliese actually spent quite a bit of time at one of those sanatoriums. But it wasn't solely because of the things that she was going through mentally. She was also, like, she had a weaker constitution. When she was young, she had mumps, measles, pneumonia, and tuberculosis.
I mean, good Lord, it's like she was being tortured from day one.
Yeah. So she spent a lot of time in those facilities because at that time, they were just like, well, we're going to basically quarantine you here with society's undesirables. And if you get better, hey, I guess that's cool. But if you don't, hey, you're not infecting anybody else. So, yeah, she spent a lot of time in a sanatorium because she was sick with pneumonia as well.
Good Lord, that poor thing. Do you have any pictures or anything?
So, the pictures of Anneliese Michel are, like, the one you most often see is her college photo.
Like before the shit hit the fan, basically.
Yeah. So she was a really...
She's a beautiful girl. So I see a girl with like high cheekbones, soft, dainty features, looks like dark eyes, dark bobbed hair, very quintessential 70s, you know.
Now, mentally prepare yourself for what she looked like towards the end during the exorcisms, okay? Keep in mind, this is the same girl.
That is not the same girl. Oh, the only thing that I can see is the eyebrows and the eyes and the hair. Oh my gosh, it's so sad.
Yeah, towards the end, you know, she had refused to eat and drink. And so she had basically emaciated herself. Very sunken features, very skin and bone type of aspect. Lots of like darkening and blacking around the eyes because it was so sunken in. It's a very, very sad story. And, you know, here's a picture of the family before everything happened.
Now, the picture I'm looking at right now, I mean, so it was all 4 girls, is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
all girls.
All girls, which I have all girls. And then, I mean, they all look happy, healthy, put together. Good Lord.
Yep.
It's just sad.
It is. It's a very sad story. And it became a movie with, you know, the exorcism of Emily Rose. It has influenced a lot of pop culture, for sure. Just with, like, there's a book about it. There's documentaries about it. One of the videos that I watched this morning was about a guy who purchased, like, one of those steamer trunks from part of the Michel family, and they wanted it gone. They wanted it gone. What was inside of it was basically the exorcism box that stayed in Anneliese's room.
No way.
Which is more often referred to as like a last rites box. This is a box that is consecrated. It holds a small silver candelabra, somewhere to put holy water, a vial of holy water, and different pockets and things to put like the Eucharist and, you know, the wine for the blood of Christ kind of thing. But it's used to go to a sick or dying person's home and give them last rites. And in this case, it basically just stayed at Anneliese's home. It was in the same room with her for a very long period of time during all of her exorcisms. And like on the back of it, scratched, is Michel. So this particular video that I watched was just talking about the acquisition of it and how he was kind of pumped. He's like, this is a really crazy item to have. And they actually brought in, I'm going to say it's an Episcopal priest, because in the Catholic faith, women cannot be priests. And this was a woman priest. So I'm going to say it's Episcopalian priest, because I know that they can be. And anyway, she gave a little bit of history about the box and what type of box it was. And they went ahead and they blessed it.
Yeah.
And she apparently had a whole bunch of feelings during the whole blessing of it. So that's kind of interesting. But it's on YouTube. It's an interesting type of watch. Yeah.
Okay, well. Thanks for bumming me out.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Oh, man. Okay, well, hopefully I don't have any possession dreams later, because I feel like it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, chances are pretty good. And for those of you gravediggers, before I went into detail with this particular case, both Jess and our editor were like kind of making fun.
Okay, we're not gonna talk about it.
And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't talk bad about the dead. You know what? I bet you're gonna feel like shit after you hear the story.
Not really.
No, of course you don't, because you don't have a heart. You have no soul, sir. But I guess with that, we'll go ahead and we'll lay this one to rest. And hopefully Annelise's soul is at rest and at peace.
Hope so.
But let us know what you think, gravediggers. Do you think that she was possessed? Do you think she was just very mentally ill? You know, send us a message on Instagram. Or send us an email at talesfromtheGravespod@gmail.com. Give us a follow, give us a like, leave us a review. Helps us grow, helps us know what you guys like and what you don't like. But until next time, question everything, gravediggers. Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, please feel free to follow, like, rate, and review Tales from the Graves podcast on your preferred listening platform.
We also would like to know what you think and what topic you suggest we unearth next. Email us at talesfromthegravespod@gmail.com or reach out to us at Tales from the Graves podcast on Instagram.
And if you have Discord, join us in the graveyard. The link is in our bio on our Instagram, as well as this listening platform. Thanks again, Gravediggers.